agency side, it's a very interesting dynamic. Now, you've seen both sides of the coin, so I'm excited to listen. Anyways.
That was the career development plan.
Exactly, I like it. Take it away, guys. It's all yours.
All right. Hope everyone enjoyed their lunch. So as Perrin said, I'm Jason Newport. I run the mobile practice at Carat, Aegis Media's flagship media services agency, and I'm happy to be joined by Curt Hecht of the Weather Channel. Let's just get started, Curt. So you spent a lot of time, what, almost 25 years?
25 years at Publicis Group.
Right, right. So what brought you to the supply side, and how have things been going since your arrival there?
I mean, I think it was pretty, Alex on Mars was up earlier, so it was great working with a lot of fantastic people at Publicis. When people say, why did you switch, it was actually very kind of a human thing. I'd been in Paris for 2 years. I knew that I was going to move back to the States. I was actually flying back from Paris to San Francisco or New York pretty much every other week. So it was time to come back. And I think any time for anybody when you're going to make a big career shift, so another conversation with the wife, are we going back to Chicago? What school are the kids going to go to? I just started to think about where I wanted to go, and David Kenny had already been named the CEO at Weather Channel, and he was my former boss at Publicis Group. And so when he was thinking about where he wanted to go in January at CES, he laid out, you know, I'm looking at this company and that company, and one that he named was the Weather Channel. And so my advice to him was, out of all the things that you're looking at, I think the Weather Channel would be the most interesting. And the reason I said that was I felt like they were a technology company. If you look at their history, if you look back 30 years, they were doing kind of local addressable advertising, which is something that people talk about today, right? So local on the eights, cable head end, giving people their local weather was a big deal, and they invented that technology. And so I thought for him that made a lot of sense. I thought that it was a good data company and a big media property, and he wanted to stay connected to the marketing community. So it was only 3 months later when I was in New York, and he basically said to me, why don't you switch jobs? I kind of had to eat my own dog food on the advice that I gave him, right? So I like the clients and the technology and the data piece, and we talked about the role. Like, I'm a platform guy at heart. Whenever I worked in the agency world, whether it was building a search capability, whether it was kind of the advent of the trading desk and what we did in 2008, I like to build solutions that help marketers, and I view the Weather Channel as a platform company.
And have you been able to get after it, you know, as soon as you hit the track running there, or have there been any surprises since your arrival?
Not a ton. I would actually say that there's probably more raw assets than I actually had an appreciation for. So it's been a little over 100 days since I've joined the company. We've done 2 acquisitions. So we bought Weather Underground, which was very complementary to Weather Channel in that it's crowdsourced weather. I actually put my own weather station up in my backyard this weekend, which took all of 5 minutes. It's like white little computer with a solar panel. It hits the Wi-Fi network in your house, and like instantly you're broadcasting the weather from your backyard. So you could see like how crowdsourced weather and Weather Underground, being able to bring actually at the end of the day a lot more data into the overall enterprise was very interesting for us. And then we also bought a company called Weather Central, and Weather Central is more on the professional services side, B2B. I'm a little bit, you'll tell, a weather geek, and so having a company that's really good at collecting wind data or hail information, like that also matters to us and the companies we work with. So I think the combination of the acquisitions and then also just seeing how many assets Weather Channel had has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So as you look at the trends, in modern marketing, if you will, and you already mentioned, a few of them, and I don't know that they're trends. These things have been around for a long time, but the role of location, social, collaborative consumption, obviously mobile. Let's talk a little bit about location and also social. What is your focus, right now? If you had to pick 1 or 2 things in terms of the blueprint for the next few years that are going to drive the growth of the Weather Channel.
Got it. Well, for me specifically, I would say the 3 things that strategically I'm spending the most time outside of just execution, which we all need to deal with, is connecting the weather data. So these professional services arms that we have basically program our network. They program the local news affiliates around the weather. And right now what we want to do is program the marketer. So basically taking weather data and connecting it to the marketing organization is a big focal point for us. I think a third of the economy is driven by the weather. One of our clients recently, their CEO said in quarterly earnings, 22 times or 20 times, something like that, the impact of the weather on sales, and it wasn't a good story. So what we're focused on is how do we make the weather not an excuse and something that proactively marketers can take advantage of to change basically the outcome on sales, and the data supports that. So that's one big initiative, and I'm bringing in more analytics talent, more engineering and product talent, so that we can productize that offering, because the marketers seem very interested. Mobile is a big deal for us. So I think today Alex is in the audience here, who runs product on the mobile side, but we just hit 90 million downloads of the app on the phone, which is a pretty big number. I think we've got around 40 or 50 million regular users of that. So that's a big number just for the phone, and we just hit 10 million on the iPad, which is number 2 to iBooks. So I have to spend a lot of time on that. We're a marketplace leader. How we get both the experiential side of it correct, not only in terms of weather and your experiences around it, but also the advertising piece is very important too. You were at our event last week, which was called Human and the Machine, where we focused on what's happening on the automated side of the mobile marketplace, because we want to be best in class there, and then what's happening on the experiential side. And we shared kind of an early preview of where we're going with our ad formats and experiences for a select group of partners. And the focus on that is how do we get beyond the banner and really leverage our reach and scale. And so most people think of a Facebook or a Google or a Twitter as leading the innovation in the media marketplace. Our belief is, based on being number 2 on an iPad, that should be us. And so we're spending a lot of time in terms of taking a position on what the experience should be, talking to the marketers, and with that size of audience, we want to make sure that people stay engaged with the applications.
Yep, no, it makes a lot of sense. One thing I noticed at the event last week, I was on the machine part of the panel.
Yeah, it's great.
And then had to, or I got to listen to the indulgence of the creative guys for about an hour and a half as they went through all of their award-winning campaigns, that kind of thing. But it was very fun. The interesting thing that I found that I hadn't necessarily noticed before was that creative was driving more of the conversation around experience, right? And the value of the medium, that kind of thing. And it was almost as if there was still a complete silo or disconnectedness, between the respective agencies, right? Between creative, between media, that kind of thing. Are you seeing that change, now that you're on the other side of the business, in terms of the handshake between specialties or disciplines?
Well, we're working on it. So I think that our sales force was largely tuned to seeing the media community, which I think is great, and obviously that's incredibly important, and focused really on how do we take share of budget. But what that usually manifests itself into is buying the ad formats that are available, and really just kind of moving share around the audience, which having come from the media world, that's critical. The other thing that we've been trying to do, though, is also spend time with the creative community, where we're basically showing them where we're going with the product roadmap. You can't really look at the weather without looking at a map. And so we're trying to get them to engage in not only what's the forecast, but what can I do on the screen, what's available around the weather. And one of the things that we want to focus on with the creative community is not the data side of the business. I think that's really, really clear. Where we want to focus is, how do I feel about the weather? Like, how does the weather make me feel if it's been rainy for 5 days, if it's been hot for 4 days? There's this feeling sense that, having come from the agency world and having worked with brands like to be connected with emotion. And so in particular right now, we want to spend time with the creatives to basically say, how do we leverage the feeling around the weather and connect that to brands? And that's leading to a very different dialogue in terms of what we do on the advertising side. And eventually the dots need to be connected in terms of the marketer, the media agency, and the creative. But a lot of this is around discovery in a new channel where I think everybody's trying to build out their capability to be best in class.
Yep. No, absolutely. So, and you mentioned channel, right? That it's a new channel or emerging channel, you know, the consumer certainly doesn't think so, you know, but I think the agencies and brands, it still very much is exploratory, right? But we're seeing video now, we're seeing print become publishing, you know, and even within the agencies, it's not necessarily a channel conversation all the time. You know, the strategy very much goes back to, you know, experiential and having a great day rather than checking the weather, that kind of thing, right? But are you seeing, what is going to, you know, migrate the budgets, you know, from one channel to another, or, you know, are you seeing enough done on that side? And what are you doing to sort of evolve, you know, the way that marketers think about it and optimize the medium for transactions, you know, essentially within the agency world?
Well, we'll do our parts. I mean, if you look at the weather channel, I think what's built the brand across the channels is the brand, right? So started as a cable network. Somebody bought the weather.com URL back in 94, 95, which was genius. They didn't buy, you know, Weather Channel, they bought Weather, which fantastic move. And I think a lot of our growth from the apps and in general in mobile web has come from the brand. When people go to the Play Store or wherever it may be, they look for Weather Channel and the app comes up. So we've really focused not by the channel, but around the brand itself and what it means. And you know, out of all the media companies that are out there, I think a couple have done a really good job of actually being relevant at scale on every screen, right? So I think ESPN and Weather Channel might be the best examples in terms of fully distributed cable networks and large scale really on any screen that you want to get it. And we pull that story together for the marketers through our sales team. The offerings that we bring tend to be ideas that can be strung across the different screens in a really relevant way. And as we move into 2013, we're focused on the weather enthusiast as an audience or as a profile and somebody who's really connected to the weather. And what that means is, you know, not only do we want to give people the information around the weather, but we want to basically empower them to do the things that they want to do with the weather, right? So runners care about the weather. They want to have a good workout. They want to know if it's raining. You want to wear different clothes. Actually, people that work outdoors for a living care about the weather every day in terms of how they prepare for it. So those ideas can work across the screen around, you know, the weather enthusiast and around the way the runner basically connects with the weather itself. And so we'll do it. Like, we'll bring the ideas together, stitched across the screens, and make it less of a channel conversation.
Yeah, and that's great. What are you doing, you know, in terms of social, and you mentioned creating a platform, right,
Sure.
around feeling and emotion and that kind of thing. You've had a big focus on social, right, for the past few years, even with Facebook, with Twitter, you know, but also in giving the consumer the opportunity to have a voice in the programming of their experience in relation to your property, right? That's obviously something that's going to continue, and are you embracing the unique attributes of mobile in terms of the surrounding, the climate, you know, those scenarios that don't happen in the home or office but are unique to the real world, right? That seems to be a category where you have a pretty distinct advantage. Do you believe you're thinking about mobile uniquely compared to other networks, other publishers, other media publishers out there?
Yeah, well, so I'll give you kind of two responses to that, one that's social and one that's mobile.
I'll try to make my next question more complicated.
No, so I'll do the best I can. I guess the audience ultimately decides. But so we launched something it was probably my first month on the job that the product team had come up with called My Friend's Weather. And it was a really good idea. We were actually sharing it with a marketer who happened to be down in Atlanta, and there was no real revenue number against it. It was just an idea. And the idea was basically, let's take the forecast, let's take the social graph, in this particular case, Facebook, and bump the two together, right? So through Facebook Connect, if you use weather.com, you can link. And what we're doing is taking your friends, if you've connected, and pushing it against the forecast so that you can basically get an alert around severe weather on a national level. And we did this right before Isaac. So next thing you know, you've got a big storm rolling in, a bunch of people have authenticated, and Travelers Insurance, who really actually cares about severe storms, decided to sponsor it. And I think they did actually a fantastic activation in terms of getting a program, connecting to letting people know that they were in harm's way through their friends, and then pushing it to their own pages, right? Another client has since come on, but I think what's happening, and I can't speak on Facebook's behalf, but one of the reasons that the Weather Channel took off with the cable operators is that, in a way, it's community service, right? People want to know if there's bad weather coming, and so that they can prepare for it. I think what we're seeing with My Friend's Weather is the next iteration of that on the social graph. And so, that's severe weather on a national basis, but our ability to go hyper-local around the weather, because that's how it actually operates, and really think through, like, what's social mean for severe weather on the graph and play a role in that, the way that we did with cable, I think is right in front of us. On the mobile answer to that is Nokia basically took My Friend's Weather, and it's on the handset as a feature for them for a certain window in time. So, their ability to basically have My Friends and the weather forecast and what's happening on the mobile screen versus the PC screen is something else that we're working with.
It's very cool, yeah. You mentioned, as we think through, the opportunities for brands, for advertisers, that kind of thing, how is basically the paid media opportunity evolving, right, in terms of how media is bought, sold, and measured, paid's relationship with earned and owned, right? So, and quantifying all of that, right, in terms not just the media pushed out, but the media created, right, by optimizing that paid media for shareability and social interactions and API management pieces, right?
What we're talking about.
Yeah, no, which is the future of a lot
APIs,
of this that we're talking.
I do too, actually.
I'm the machine,
right?
So, but are you seeing a greater understanding of marketers understanding how to leverage all those opportunities, and also, on your side, how to monetize it, right? Is there a meeting in the middle?
I think so. I mean, it's, my experience after being in the business for so long is that you'll find, pockets of innovation. So it could be a capability leader at an agency that really gets this and can understand what to do with an API and connect or join data sets. It could be a client team, right? It could be, one of the credit card companies. But if you can find those different groups of people, whether it be a client, capability, a marketer, you can start to have conversations around that. I mean, I think the real trick is how do you do it at scale across the industry? And so we're rolling out a product called Weather Effects, which is really focused exactly on that, which is, one of the, I don't know if I can announce the marketer, actually, I can't, but I'd like to. But basically what they did was they gave us their sales data, and they wanted to own rainy days. And basically we looked at the data and said, actually, you don't want to own rainy days. You want to own the couple of days before the rainy day, because people want to plan in advance, and then they want to have, this thing to do on the rainy day. And so, their ability to basically give us their sales data and our ability to basically bump that up against syndicated information, the forecast, we went back and we've actually helped them, and with their agency partner, write a communication plan around owning the days before the rainy day, which is really all entirely data-driven. We need to automate the process of, rain doesn't happen on a national level. It actually happens city by city. So you actually have to write a media plan around the weather, which is about as dynamic as it gets, right? It's dynamic like keywords when that kind of demand comes into the market. And so when marketers say, how do I write a media plan around the weather? I'm like, it's kind of like managing your search campaign, right? You don't know what's going to happen with that keyword volume. You can model it out. But those that wrap their mind around that and are data-driven in general engage in that conversation. And so I don't know if we can do that for every category, but I think that we can certainly do it for home improvement, insurance, and QSR. And the more we dig into the data, you start to see the brands that really should be thinking that way.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, that brings up a good point around attribution, and are we, just because we can measure it, are we measuring, what we should, right? So you talk a lot about performance, the value of data, but what's going on in terms of brand, right? And looking at time spent, right, and new metrics or unified KPIs that aren't necessarily established or standardized yet. Are you, helping to drive that conversation with the agencies, or what are the conversations you're having with the demand side on that front?
Yeah, listen, we're listening. I think that we're pretty flexible around that. I mean, there will be industry metrics that are out there around attribution. I think, Today it's about the view and making sure that that's, actually happened. So, we've got smart people on the team. Different organizations have a different approach or a different philosophy, and then there will be industry initiatives, and we want to do what the marketers and the agencies want at the end of the day. I mean, if they have a belief in the market going in a certain direction, my focus is let's just make sure that we can tune to it, be ahead of the conversation, because it takes time to align a sales team. It takes time to get our product guys on board with where the industry's going, and I'd rather be in front of it than behind it. And so, yeah, I mean, we're open to those conversations. Yeah.
Have you found that, in terms of your size and scale, right, which is a huge advantage. It's the first property I think of when I think of scale,
right.
is Weather Channel. Does that hinder, your agility, your ability to innovate, right? It certainly is an advantage, but is it also, is it a blessing but also a curse, in terms of product road mapping and responding to market conditions or, new things that are coming out every day?
Well, I just came out of a 40,000 person organization, and so the Weather Channel I think all in is around 1,500. So the scale differences. I mean, I feel like where I came from was much bigger, and the Weather Channel to me feels absolutely like a startup, and so pretty nimble. I trade emails daily with the product guys, and I think what we want to be known for is the ability to really bring. I have sales and ad tech and ad ops and product together to basically solve client problems faster in a more nimble way than some of the other platform companies. I think that we can be very, very good at that. And I think some of the clients that make a lot of sense for us may not necessarily be the top of the list for a Google or a Facebook. So sure. If we can brainstorm and do ideas and bring ideas to market like, My Friend's Weather on a regular basis, I think that we can be viewed as really more of a nimble kind of media technology platform company for the categories that matter. And so I think we're pretty dynamic. We've got a fairly new management team at the Weather Channel. So David Kenny's new, our COO Chris Walters is new, I'm new, our CIO is new. And so we're all kind of coming at this at the same time. Alex Lind, who's in the audience, we just hired away from Yahoo to do mobile products. So I think you have this point in time where everybody's kind of like, all right, we're here. We've been here for 6 months. Why did we come here? And like, what's the mission that we're on? And so it feels like a startup. It really does.
That's great. It sounds like you're having fun over there.
Yeah, 30-year-old startup.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. A startup with the world's largest Rolodex or whatever it might be.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's really like one of those things that most amazing to me is like most people start their day with us, right? I mean, they basically wake up in the morning and they want to know what they should dress their kids in. Will they be eating lunch outside today? Am I going to go for a run? What's the weather going to be like? Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a start engine for the day.
That's great. One last question, I guess.
Sure.
Parent, or are we going to go to the audience?
Yeah.
Just a moment.
One last question, we'll go to the audience.
So let's have some fun for a minute. What are, Weather Channel aside, agency allegiances aside, brand, clients aside, who's doing some stuff out there that you respect, or that you are thinking about, how can I interpret that and make it valuable for my organization?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been this role, previous role, like I always pay a lot of attention to what the platform companies are doing, right? Like Google, Facebook, Adam Bain at Twitter, those guys iterate and develop at this like rapid pace. And so much of the media ecosystem is now connected to those companies as a platform that I feel like it's really, really important to stay connected to them. I stay connected to a client that was a client when I was at Publicis and a client that's now a client at Weather Channel. Folks like Citibank, where they have CMOs like Michelle Paluzzo that was at Travelocity and kind of understands technology and data and what they're doing at that bank in particular, I find to be awfully interesting and stay connected to them. Now in my new role, it's interesting to be able to go into all these agencies that I used to compete against, right? And so learning, what I've seen is that all agencies actually want to do pretty much the same thing, which is a fantastic job for their clients, and they have different paths in which they do that. But I think the agencies and watching what they do is fantastic too, because you've got 40,000 people and times 4 at the different holding companies that are working on a lot of different brands and are incredibly clever. And you see, like we saw last Thursday, what the creative point of view around that is, and then kind of the guys that are dealing with the media space. So I love to learn, and I think that the more connection points between the platform companies, some best-in-class marketers that are out there. I mean, I think your new one, GM, and I spent a few years in Detroit. Detroit, I think, still quietly might be kind of the digital capital of the world, just based on the fact that you've got 3 massive marketers up there that spend billions of dollars. And usually, if you want to see where big ideas are going, you check out what's happening in auto.
All right, let's go to questions in the audience real quick. Questions for Jason or Curt? Going once? No? Going twice? All right, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Let's give them a big round of applause.
Take that.
Thank you, guys.
That's good.